Welcome to the Blue Mantis CIO Fireside Chat. Today's CIOs and other IT leaders find themselves at a critical juncture. Windows 10, a rock-solid pillar for many organizations, will reach its end of support on October 14th, 2025. The clock is ticking, and the need for migration to Windows 11 is becoming increasingly urgent. We all recall how the pandemic panic of 2020 led to an unprecedented purchase of laptops and other hardware at the time. But in the 4 years since, IT departments are facing new economic realities around remote work, what productivity really means, and the coming AI revolution. The fact is, most businesses are long overdue for a hardware refresh. At Blue Mantis, we're seeing an uptick in IT leaders wanting not just to upgrade some PCs, but also take this opportunity to integrate AI tools like Microsoft Copilot into their business processes and give employees a competitive edge. So, how can a CIO migrate to Windows 11, start using Copilot AI effectively, and do all of that in a way that enhances security without sacrificing productivity? That's what our panel will discuss today in this CIO Fireside Chat. But first, let me introduce you to our panel of distinguished guests. Mark Rizza.
Thanks, Rob. Hi, I'm Mark Rizza. I am a solutions architect in the security and risk practice within Blue Mantis. I've had about over 30 years of experience in the financial services, insurance, and healthcare industries in various roles, CIO, CTO, vCISO type roles. So with that, hopefully I can give some valuable information to our guests today on listening in. And hopefully you guys will see some good stuff coming from our discussions.
Along with Mark and I, we have Jeremy Bello. Welcome, Mark.
Jeremy. Hi, y'all. I'm Jeremy Bello, solutions architect for Blue Mantis. Up here from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and here from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and I've got a roughly 20 years of experience in IT consulting and administration. Been through several of these OS upgrades through the years, as many of you may have as well. And I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly, and I'm looking forward to helping you guys avoid being one of the latter two.
Thank you, Jeremy. For those in the audience, please, we would like to make this as interactive as possible. Please feel free to share your insights, ask questions in the chat that's online. We will be referring back and forth to the chat as we go through, as well as conducting some online live polling, which we will discuss as we talk through this issue. So gentlemen, what are you currently seeing across the industry in regards to migration plans for upgrading Windows 11? Mark?
Thanks, Rob. So what I'm kind of seeing right now is sort of a variable depending on the size of the company and where people are, in their journey to get to Windows 11. So for the most part, I think the biggest challenge that folks are going to have is, moving to 11 is very similar to those folks who had to move from 7 to 10. And it's all about the planning, right? So in addition to the regular planning of, getting an understanding of where your devices are because of the new requirement around the hardware, such as TPM 2.0, as well as if you really are going to start to take advantage of the AI component that comes along with Windows automatically, is the governance of your policies, procedure, and data, because you need to build that into your plan to get to the end of October. And I would recommend that you don't shoot for October, you shoot for the spring or summer of 2025 and not wait till the very end.
Jeremy?
Right, to expound upon what Mark was saying here, get out in front of it. A lot of people are still kind of waiting in the wings, waiting to not be the first out there to upgrade to the newer OS. I wouldn't do that here. It's, there are hardware requirements, there's planning that needs to go into it. There's a lot of knowledge that you need around your environment, before you start to implement, so.
Well, I think it's interesting because one of the things, Mark, you sort of touched on this, the whole concept of you really need to have policies in place as you roll out this new technology so that you can incorporate or even restrict, if that's the organizational desire, the use of AI within your environment. At the same time, you have hardware constraints because we're talking about some new hardware with TPM 2.0. And the reality is we're still seeing some lagging issues with supply chain, right? Getting product. So you have to do some of that planning very proactively. I'd like to release a live poll question for the audience. Where are you in the planning process for your Windows 11 migration? Take 1 minute here while we have people respond, and then we'll jump into discussing the results. This is going to be an interesting poll because the answers here will drive the rest of our time together today. This is it, right? I see some people are hesitant to even answer. Oh my God, do I want to press that button? Almost wrapped up. We have a little bit more than 75% of respondents. All right, are we ready? Whoa, let's end the poll now. All right, so from an audience standpoint, where are we in the planning process, right? We can see 33% have not started. Another almost 30% are researching migration options. We have 11% testing app compatibility in a lab. And then we have another almost 30%, 28% launched a pilot program to users. That last one is shocking to me. That's incredibly impressive. I mean, I would have bet that many more were in the not have started phase, especially because we're so early in 2024, and quite frankly, mid to end 2025 seems really, really far away. Like, I got a year and a half to do this, almost 2 years to do this. What do you guys think? What are you seeing here what's calling out to you with these results?
Well, I'm with you that I'm really happy to see the testing app compatibility in a lab answers here, as well as the launch pilot program. You guys obviously out in front. Those who haven't started or were researching, definitely get moving towards the goal here. You want to the app compatibility issue can be an issue, certainly something you want to tackle early.
Right. And I would just add to that, it's always the third-party apps. It's not that Microsoft has done better and better each time as you're upgrading from the older version to the newer version. And when everything is sort of Microsoft, it's a lot smoother. It's the third-party apps that are, SaaS-like, that need to integrate into Microsoft where you can run into trouble. So testing the app compatibility and launching pilots like the bottom two questions, and people are underway. Not only is it surprising, but it's very good news, because that's where a lot of the gotchas are.
Mark, Jeremy, real quick, what about homegrown apps?
I consider those like third-party legacy apps. So yeah, those are where you're going to run into some trouble, because it's all, depending on what the software development team has done, they could be looking at things that are not compatible with the new hardware requirements. So that's the issue that you're going to run into as you try to migrate up to Windows 11.
Got it. I'm still concerned where we have almost 60%, actually, a little bit more than 60%, have not started or are researching migration options, which that's going to be, I don't know what that research consists of. Is it we stay with Microsoft Windows platform or we move to Mac OS, or is it, I mean, that's going to be an interesting thing. All right, let's see. So both of you have now brought this up a couple times. While we're aware of the new hardware requirements, including the TPM 2.0 chip, are either of you finding that most customers understand what's in their current inventory? And how as a customer or an IT manager or CIO, does one determine what's in their inventory so that they can make the upgrades needed by October 25? Because quite frankly, October 25 is going to come fast.
Right.
Jeremy, we'll start with Jeremy.
All right. Yeah, so right now I find that a lot of clients don't necessarily know don't really have a great inventory on their hardware out there. They don't know what's compatible with Windows 11, what's not compatible, and things like that. So the upgrade process is going to depend heavily on on the platform that you're using to manage those assets. Those of you that are out there using Intune and Autopilot and such, you're going to have an easier road here. Microsoft has it built into Intune, the reporting to let you know what's compatible, what's not, what's going to work, what isn't, what's a problem child out there, and what's going to be, most likely a smooth migration. Those with third-party tools are going to have to really rely on those to pull the kind of information that they need, and it may not always be a simple task. So.
And I just add to that, I mean, coming from the security practice, I mean, we always advise customers to have a good asset management plan in place, including the tools that are actually going after the inventory. So if you're one of those customers, then doing that is going to help you along the way in your planning. If not, now's the time. I mean, maybe that's where that research question comes in. Now's the time where you need to figure that out, because the very first part of the planning is to know what you need to do in order to do that migration, and understanding where your inventory is at is critical.
All right, we have a great question that just came in, and Mark, I appreciate that thought. Is this a workaround right here? Someone just sent in a great question. Is moving users from Win 10 PCs to Windows 365 cloud PCs a way to avoid app compatibility security issues, or is that opening a can of worms?
So take that.
Yeah, no, I don't want to touch it. So yeah, no, you have that one, my friend.
Right. So two pieces to that: the app compatibility and the security side of it. Right. So on app compatibility, you're still putting the application on the same platform, right? You're still going to have to work through those app compatibility issues that you would on a hardware desktop. However, on the security side, which I think Mark will go much further into, but you're moving that desktop into a data center. Your data's not leaving the data center out to an endpoint, creating a potentially much more secure environment, I would say, in my opinion.
Yep, no, I would agree with that. Again, when it's in the data center like that, as Jeremy mentioned, it's harder to get exfiltrate the information out. However, the one thing just to be cautious of, almost no matter where you are, is that the gaps that might come up, especially if you're using AI tools, those are still going to be there. But in general, I do agree with what Jeremy said.
See, this is an interesting, very creative idea. I like the way that this viewer is thinking about it. My take would be, if this is a direction that you want to move, be aware of policies and also, quite frankly, security compliance. How are you going to capture the login activity? Where are you going to capture this, the user activity, so that you have the same level, if not more robust, compliance that you would have with direct endpoints. So I'd like to jump into a second poll question. What would delay an end user's update to Windows 11? So this for the audience, again, what would delay an end user's update to Windows 11? And we'll take a minute here, just pause real quick. And
Not
Yeah.
super surprising
That
result
one-
here.
Unlike the last question, this is pretty straightforward.
Mhm.
yeah, you know, I'm going to make a comment before I pass it off to you two, but absolutely. All right, one more second and we will end the poll and then we will talk a little bit about the results. All right, so my first comment, right, is this is incredibly interesting, right? We see almost 60% are concerned about technical debt, old applications, technical debt. That's your world. You know this stuff inside and out, right? And you've seen it. You've actually, I know you and you, Jeremy, have both had to clean up messes because of technical debt. So we'll jump into that. I am actually shocked that that fear got 0 votes. I am shocked by that. I would have figured that there were people that would say, you know, with everything that's happening with AI, I'm concerned about all of these other things. I'd rather wait and see what happens before I jump in. But yet none of the attendees voted that way. So Mark, why don't you dive in, talk about your thoughts? What are you seeing from the poll results?
So it's definitely not surprising. I think the technical debt, we talked about that early on. It just shows that, so in one case in my previous lifetimes, I came from the insurance company. Insurance are notorious for having old legacy applications, sometimes 40 years old. So those are going to be the tough ones to migrate. And it just goes back to what we started with the first question, and that was you just need to get your planning underway, especially for the third-party applications. And those are the types of applications where you need to start earlier rather than later. Get them into the lab, test them, see what happens, because you're likely to need some type of software remediation in order to take advantage of Windows 11.
Okay, Jeremy?
Yep. Going with what Mark said here, for the most part, seeing that majority in the old applications and technical debt just tells me the time is now to start, get moving on those, working through those applications, figuring out what's the game plan going to be to go forward, right? Are we gonna have to do some type of a migration? Are we gonna have to change softwares? There's a lot that goes along with that.
Let me run back. Well, thank you, Jeremy. Let me run back one other point. We haven't talked about lack of bandwidth, right?
I
Mark,
could see that. Yeah.
this is interesting to me because I mean, we all know as part of Blue Mantis, we all know we have a 5G initiative where we're helping organizations, right? We have a point of view where we talk about you can't have ubiquitous computing without ubiquitous communication, right? And so we see 5G as a huge enabler to everything moving forward, especially around AI. But this lack of bandwidth, is this something that 5G can help with, whether it be back office with 5G, internal or private 5G, and as well public 5G for users that are remote in the field? Is that what we're thinking?
I was thinking more about this question, more about the lack of bandwidth of time.
Aha.
Not the bandwidth of movement.
There we go.
So,
Resource bandwidth.
So
exactly. So
different resource.
Capacity planning. If it's what you thought it was, I do think that would be helpful in migrating from a data perspective. So, but I do think the bandwidth issue is probably more about human bandwidth and the ability of the. What has to happen is the people that are doing all the tactical work in 2024 now need to be able to start that. I keep harping on this, but it goes back to the planning. You know that you're going to have capacity challenges. So you need to start to migrate people onto the team that's going to be responsible for the migration. I know it's easy for me to say that, but it's true. I mean, unless you can somehow convince the CFO to bring in additional bandwidth, you really just need to start planning.
You're going to start having to plan and then execute.
Right.
Yeah, just adding on to that is it's going to depend pretty heavily on your tools here, and shameless plug for Microsoft Intune here, which is certainly going to make that job a lot easier. Those first steps and that planning and the remediation steps after that to get ready to go for it. That's really gonna it's really gonna compress the amount of time that you're able to or that you're having to go into working through those issues. And
Nice. Okay. Well, I think your bandwidth makes sense as well. Well, when we see things like Epic and we see things like SAP saying, hey, we are now fully 5G integrated because we're taking in data faster, it becomes interesting to think about the AI functionality that's going to be coming from workstations, desktops, and laptops in the field. Yep. Excellent. All right. From a security perspective, is Windows 11 really safer? We hear from our vendors that you can gain 58% reduction in successful malware attacks. Is this marketing FUD, or do we think this is real?
So from my perspective, there's two pieces to this, right? So the first piece is if you're in the Microsoft stack for the most part, yes, I think that there's going to be definitely more secure aspects to Windows 11. The only caution that I bring to the table coming from the security side of things is the fact that if you're going to start to introduce AI into the mix, that you really need to have governance around your data. And it's one of the things that most companies sort of lack in the beginning. I mean, a lot of policies and procedures are created, and that's great. But if you don't have those there and you don't have a new AI policy to contribute to those overall policies, you're starting to open yourself up to some issues there. Because if you remember, the good news about Copilot is it's more efficient. The bad news is it can find everything that you didn't know.
It's more
you
efficient.
more efficient.
So those holes are still there. And if the policies aren't in place and the technical configurations aren't in place and the culture around security awareness training and other things of just training in general aren't in place, then you're going to run into some problems if you don't address it at a time. And that's what I mentioned, again, harping back to the first question, is that's where that's where you need that governance planning up front, because there's work to do there, never mind the actual migration itself.
Yep. So by default, in a perfect world, I do believe the 58% number, right? By default, Windows 11 enables certain settings, certain security settings that Windows 10 didn't. It's not that they didn't necessarily exist there. Some did, some didn't, but Windows 11 is more aggressive about enabling those out of the box, right? Now, as you go into the operating system and we start changing policies, changing settings, adding third-party software to it, we start to punch holes in that operating system, and that's where we start to open it up a bit.
Well, I think that becomes interesting as well, right? We have a question from the audience that basically asks, this viewer views tech debt and lack of bandwidth as related. So this ties back to what both of you were saying, right? Does Blue Mantis have a turnkey solution that would help us move to Win 11 if we don't, or if we do have a lean IT staff?
So I agree fully, right? Tech debt is the catalyst of lack of bandwidth here. It definitely can get you behind the sticks where, in resources. Yeah, not to make this a sales pitch here, but of course, yes, Blue Mantis does have a solution where we can get in, deploy some of our engineers get into your environment and look through your inventory, your software inventory, your hardware inventory. Take a look at those and assess what's what needs remediation out front.
And I'll just add to what Jeremy said. I mean, I wouldn't call anything a turnkey per se, but we do have solutions that can help move it along. We work very closely with Microsoft, again, not to be a sales pitch. And there's a couple of programs out there that our Microsoft team is working on that helps people understand where their inventory is at, migration issues that they're going to run into and things of that nature. So yes, we can do that. And then just purely from a staff aug perspective, we certainly have those type of programs as well to help augment any of your technical needs as it relates to this issue on migration.
Well, and I think it's interesting, right? Just simply the number of co-pilot readiness assessments that we've been working on and the AI policies that we've been working on are a leading indicator of what's necessary. But I think from a business operations standpoint, all organizations need to be thinking about, and I think this is a pivotal point. And the pivotal point is, what role do we want our employees to play in technology management? And there's a piece where we're seeing success is organizations that say, we want strategic leaders to manage partners or vendors within our organization and help them. And we're seeing it sliced up in different ways. Sometimes it's managed outsourced dev teams, sometimes it's managed outsourced security, sometimes it's managed outsourced IT teams or even network teams. But the point is, this is the time, I think, where organizations, CIOs can sit with CFOs and say, and HR and say, we don't have enough people to do all the work that's going to be necessary. What do we really want to accomplish from a technology standpoint? And how do we build an organization that meets those business goals? Do you guys see the same thing?
I see the need for it for sure. Capacity planning has always been something that's been key to, your strategic goals. So first of all, to your point, we need to put strategic goals in place. And obviously this discussion is about one of them, getting to Windows 11 by some period of time. But there's a whole host of strategic goals that every company has. And the idea is that you need to take those goals and lay them out in a way that you either know that you're going to be able to meet that, or that you will be able to figure out whether or not you might need adds to staff or even consulting or managed services or any of that. But you really, it's capacity planning. And I think that's what you were getting at.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're gonna, in the end, once you've laid all that out, you're gonna end up in most likely in a position where you're going to either need to apply more resources on the people side. You're going to invest in people, you're going to invest in solutions, or a mix of both.
Okay. All right. So now we get to the good stuff, right? What security concerns come up from having Copilot on the desktop versus Copilot in your browser versus Copilot in M365? Jeremy, do you want to start? You want to take this?
Yeah, 3 different flavors of Copilot here. So Copilot on your desktop, I'm gonna, use natural language to ask it to go ahead and change a setting on my computer. Security issues there, you want to make sure that desktop is locked down, that operating system is locked down, so that your user can't go changing settings and things like that to make your desktop less secure, to make their workstation less secure. On the browser side, your natural language again to ask Copilot in the browser something, it's going to go out there and look on the internet and look for answers for you and bring it back to you. Those answers could be good, could be bad. You want that security around your content filter in there. Make sure that Copilot's only able to get to what it needs to be able to get to. And then most importantly, on the Microsoft 365 side. And that's where the real security concern for me. comes in, right? You've got users out there who have got, a lot of companies have users out there that have access, have permissions to certain documents that are so many levels down in their SharePoint environment or their Microsoft Teams environment and such. That user may not even know that they've got access to that document. They may not know that they're a few clicks away from, the salary of their CIO. Copilot's going to find it, and it's going to find it quickly. And it's going to be efficient about it.
Efficient.
Yep. It's going to, bring it front and center and let you know. So, you really, you do want to go in there and do assessments and really go through those permissions before you go turning something like Copilot loose in your environment.
Okay. Mark, so let's frame this, right? You've been a CIO, you've been a CTO, you've been a CISO, you've dealt with data leaks, data loss, data breaches. You've seen the gamut, right? You've worked in how many, two, three, four regulated industries in your career. What are you thinking about when you think about security from
Well, I mean, I've already
Copilot security, right?
yeah, I've already kind of explained the concerns about, the gaps in policy, gaps in configurations, and then gaps in culture, I think is the last one. So even if you have the most rock solid policies, if you can't make the employees understand the meaning of those policies and to implement those policies, then you're still losing out. And then on the gaps piece that Jeremy's talking about, I mean, Copilot will find data that you never expected it to find. And that's where you really have to take a look at your access and privileged users on what they really can see. Does all the users in your company need that level of access? Because that means they can get at just about anything. And it's something that anybody who's doing policies and procedures for companies preaches. But once you preach it, then you've got to remediate it. And I think that's sort of the end game. And
So just as a side note, it seems like Copilot will help drive, or the adoption of Copilot, let me say it that way, can help drive zero trust environments, right? Like, because we want organizations to be going in, looking at their user access, their need for access, their user roles, their need for roles, and then be able to, as you say, I mean, unleash. I would say roll out, but I'm excited about Copilot and what I think it can bring. All right, let's do another poll question. It's been a little bit here. What are your barriers to obtaining buy-in with your CXO peers when you need to roll out a new technology initiative? So again, for the audience, what does it take to get buy-in from your CXO peers? I'm thinking CFO, maybe president or CEO, but it could be chief legal officer or chief sales officer, COO, to adopt a technology initiative like this. One more minute, and then we will jump into we'll discuss the responses. I am sure there are people there moving the mouse back and forth saying 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, like almost spinning a wheel or rolling a die. Like, can I pick all of them? Right? Like, that's happening right now. There's panic that I don't want to pick the wrong answer, but they're all
Where's
right
the
answer.
all of the above?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Blue Mantis.
rank them.
Yeah. All right, let's dive in, right? Okay. So what we're seeing is a small handful have a lack of planning. See that as an issue, a barrier to obtaining buy-in. We're seeing, wow, almost 75% between budget and competing priorities. And then our 20%, of course, is the resource and time constraints. Those will Those would be the good ones. Jeremy, you want to lead this off, and then Mark?
Yeah, so,
Any surprises?
no surprises here. To be honest with you, I see competing priorities and budget, as you mentioned, are pretty much neck and neck there. I almost look at competing priorities as just about in the same realm as resource and time constraints, because it pretty much they pretty much go hand in hand. So yeah, that's.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the bottom two are very similar. Budget, that is sort of, that's a normal, it's a normal response to these type of upgrades. The one thing that we could do is, to figure out, there are quite a few research items out there, not only from Microsoft, who would paint probably a rosier picture, but from other organizations where the ROI from an upgrade to Windows 11 actually shows something that you might be able to show to executives and champions.
It is interesting that you bundle competing priorities and resource and time constraints together, because when you look at it in that lens, that far outweighs budget, far outweighs lack of planning. And I think that's
an age-old question for the IT teams.
It's an age-old question for the IT teams, especially because when you think about, you have to believe there's a number of organizations out there right now that are somewhere in the middle, not near the end, but beyond the launch, in ERP rollouts or upgrades, right? CRM rollouts or upgrades, HR rollouts or upgrades that are or other types of initiatives that are multi-year initiatives. And now Microsoft is saying, hey, by the way, you have 18 months to get this done, because when it's done, when we hit the deadline, that's it. We're done. It's really interesting to think about that.
It's just really, Jeremy and I we're agreeing on, there's a lot of cloud movement too, right? There's a lot of cloud transition going on right now. And so a lot of companies are dealing with that. So that's a key piece of the competing priorities and time constraints.
Well, and it's interesting. One of our first questions from the audience was about, hey, what if we move these to the cloud? Does that help? Is there a benefit to that? And you know what? Maybe when you look at the planning and organize it correctly, you can find a way to make that work efficiently and effectively. All right. So based on this, based on these results, how should a CIO partner with their CFO or controller, right? If you're a small organization, so the CFO has the information they need to obtain board approval to make a Windows 11 transition happen, and happen without it being a last minute rush, right? Like, in my opinion, the last thing you want to be doing right now is, I think you had mentioned it earlier, Jeremy, waiting and scrambling to get there, October 1st, October 12th, October 13th of 2025.
Yeah.
And
you just need to leave some time, because there's going to be some gotchas. You just got to.
There's got to be gotchas. So how do you work with the CFO? Like what are your tips and tricks? You guys have both done this. Jeremy, do you want to start?
Sure. Data all day long. Data. I'm, for this to present this to my CFO, I'm coming to the table with reports, letting them know, hey, this is, these are the issues that we have out here. These are the remediation efforts we need to make. This is roughly how much time it's going to take. I'm laying all of that out in a very organized manner and putting it on the table, because I do find that it's easier to put budget towards efforts like this if we kind of know what we're paying for, right? We understand what we're moving towards, as opposed to we have to hurry up and do this because Microsoft said so.
even though that's sort of, there's.
It is.
There's a little,
It
there's a
is.
little bit of that too, right?
It is, but you can do it in your own terms, right?
In agreement. The other pieces to add is, again, I go back to there are ROI, a little to your data point. There is ROI out there that that a number of organizations have provided that will help to at least convince the CFO that, you know, that this can work if the efficiencies are taken into consideration the way they've been laid out by organizations. And then the other thing too that is sort of always happened in the past with big things like ERP rollouts and things of that nature is find some champions within the organization that can help you as a CIO or as an IT director approach the C-level suite, CFOs, CEOs, whomever, to show why this upgrade will help out your part of the organization. So I think that's one thing to add to, and it's just another piece of data, a little to Jeremy's point.
Right, if your CFO just finished, you know, writing a check for an Intune rollout in your organization, you can.
But there's no sales involved here.
No, you can present that as a
But-
force multiplier for Microsoft.
But I think that's the piece, right? Like the number one thing that I see a number of tech execs, where tech execs get hung up, quite frankly, is in communicating with the CFO in an ongoing, frequent basis. I mean, especially for something this monumental in terms of business, weekly talking to the CFO and bringing the data, of course, explaining the ROI, having them question and see the ROI, have the conversations, but there needs to be ongoing communication for this to be adopted and for the transition to be successful. No, to me, that's the underlying thing. It's helping the CFO, helping the peer executives really digest the where you're at, why you're there, and where you want to go and how you want to get there as early as possible. Not next week, not next month, not next year, today.
Right. Yeah, and hopefully this will at least put this, this is a project, it's a big project, and hopefully this puts it up, we raise up the awareness of this particular project to get it into the overall mix of projects that every company has to handle.
Awesome. No, listen, I really appreciate you guys coming and sharing information. This has been fantastic, right? Thank you for the audience for participating, not only in the polls and allowing us to open the conversation to meet your needs, but also in some of the questions. Really, really good questions and feedback. Thank you. I appreciate it. One last little plug is that Jeremy recently wrote a blog, was published, I believe, on Friday with, or maybe Monday with a checklist of how to prepare for this transition. And it's at least one great resource to be able to start your journey to Windows 11. Thank you.